Paul, let's move over to Manchester City, who did finally get 3 points after quite a long winless drought. But there's obviously some level of worry that has got to be said again with the loss of Rodri and their inability to perform in the way that we've seen them play for years now under Pep Guardiola. Do you think they'll try and pry Adam Wharton away from Crystal Palace here in January to kind of fill that gap?
Not so sure is the answer, in all honesty. I think it was a surprise signing when Palace took him away from Blackburn. I think he's a good young player, a good young talent. But then to chuck him into a Manchester City CDM role that we all talk about, Rodri, I think it's a big ask. I think he's a very talented young player. It would take a big transfer fee. I'm still in the camp that Manchester City don't actually need a Rodri replacement. I know that Kovacic got injured, but you look at what they've got in there, you look at the quality of players that they've got in the squad. Listen, they've got an abundance of riches. If he wants to go into the transfer market, he will. And the FFP and PSR, they can dress that up however they will. But if they want a player to replace Rodri, and we all say about replacing Rodri, you're never going to replace Rodri. You know, the Ballon d'Or winner, who's such an influential player, such a big part of that side, you can get maybe a like for like, but you're never going to replace him. And they've got the ability to do that financially. Adam Wharton, I'm not so sure he'd be one on the radar, in all honesty. You know, came with the England squad in the summer, didn't really get a look in. He's emerged on the scene very, very quickly. I don't know if he's a player that Pep would go, yeah, he would start in my 11 next weekend. I don't think he is, in all honesty. You know, you look at Manchester City and you look at that Rodri role that we all create and we all talk about, and we all superfy that role so big, Rodri, because he's done it to such a level, and we all say he's going to be the next Rodri. It's not Adam Wharton.
Pete, Martin Zubimendi, is he the next Rodri? Obviously, he's turned down moves to the Premier League, to Arsenal in the past, to Liverpool this summer. Could Pep Guardiola be the one manager in the world who could pry him over to the Premier League?
Oh, you would never rule it out with Pep, especially with the Spanish connection there in that respect. As Paul's mentioned, it's almost impossible to replace Rodri, but if Pep is looking to bolster his midfield options due to missing the likes of Rodri and Kovacic, Zubimendi would be a good fit. He's played Champions League football, he's played at the highest level with Spain, he's a Euro winner. Whether Pep will have more luck than Arne Slot and convincing him to make that move to the Premier League, we'll have to wait and see. But his deal would probably be more straightforward to do because he has a release clause in his contract at Sociedad for around £50 million. If City were to meet that, then they would be hopeful that they could bring him to the Etihad. And he's a top player. You don't have the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City showing interest in you if you're not a top player. Zubimendi's definitely that. I think he could be a good fit for City. He's at a good age, and again I think he would settle into the style of play that obviously we know Manchester City like as well. It just depends whether Zubimendi would consider leaving in January, or will he maybe wait until the end of the season and then make a decision on his future. And it won't just be Man City who will be in that race for Zubimendi. Liverpool still are big admirers of the Spain international, and I wouldn't rule out Arsenal either. So I think if he does become available and gives indications that he's ready to leave Spain, there'll be a lot of clubs who'll be chasing his signature. So yeah, it's one to watch.
Big coup for Man City, wouldn't it? I mean, we know that the size and stature of the club of Man City, but actually Liverpool, he was the only player that Liverpool really chased in the summer, the player that they really wanted. If Man City were to pull off that, it'd be a real coup, do you not think?
Yeah, it'd be a massive coup for them, and a massive one from City to one of their biggest rivals as well, one in the sort of sucker for Liverpool if they were to lose out on their main transfer target from the summer. They ended up going to one of their arch rivals in City as well, and I'm sure that wouldn't have gone unnoticed from the Etihad hierarchy as well if they could possibly do that, because these rivals do like to outdo each other, not just on the pitch but also in the transfer market. So yeah, I'm sure if Man City do want to strengthen in that midfield, like you said, Paul, I don't think money will be an issue. I think Pep was suggesting last week.
They find a way. I mean, you're very close to all the transfers, and you understand the FFP and PSR at many clubs a lot more than a lot of us. But actually, with City, they find a way.
Yeah, they'll find a way. They'll sell some other players in their squad. They've sold young players in the past. Look at what they did in the summer with Delap leaving. Obviously, Cole Palmer went as well, and that's pure profit for Manchester City when they are doing their accounts for PSR and FFP as well. So yeah,
thinking McAtee. I can read your mind. You're thinking McAtee on this one.
Quite possibly. There could be something in that if McAtee was to leave, and maybe then Man City could use that money to reinvest in for their own transfer plans themselves. And I'm sure Zubimendi could be a very viable option then.
Yeah, I mean, look what they did with James Trafford and Gavin Bazunu. Those are two goalkeepers who never, or I think combined, they had one senior appearance for Manchester City and brought in £40 million. So they certainly know how to sell and balance those
on
books.
the flip side of that, there's a Cole Palmer every now and then.
Yeah.
I think they're okay with what they've got. But, Paul, you did mention that you don't think the issue with Manchester City is actually bringing in someone to replace Rodri. How would you fix this Manchester City dilemma that none of us are really used to seeing?
That's not my job, thankfully. That's Pep Guardiola's job. And we all sit here and wax lyrical about him being the best manager that the Premier League's seen, possibly one of the best managers in football, the way he's revolutionised the game. And you only see the best of somebody in adversity. You know, we can all be the strongest, best version of ourselves when things are going well, and everybody enjoys being in that situation. You thrive being in that situation. And this is a situation that Manchester City nor Pep Guardiola have been in of recent times. Pep, surely certainly for his managerial career. So it's a test of him. How he fixes that, to me, this week it looks like Kevin De Bruyne. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Kevin De Bruyne. Suddenly he comes back into the side, he puts that captain's armband on, gets a goal, and Bernardo Silva as well gets on the score sheet. I back Bernardo Silva every week to score. He doesn't, scores in midweek. There's a lot to be said for Kevin De Bruyne being in that Manchester City side and the reliance of him. Pep touched on his age, he touched on where he was in his career, and you understand that they can't use him every week. Was it a blip? I tell you what, ask me that question after the weekend. They're at Crystal Palace on Saturday. After that game on Monday, Tuesday, we'll be talking about Manchester City. That blip's behind them. They've beaten Nottingham Forest, they've beaten Crystal Palace, Manchester City are back, they're back in the title race. Or we'll be having a conversation of they've lost at Palace after we all thought they were back. I think we'll be having the earlier of the conversations. I think they'll beat Palace at the weekend. Kevin De Bruyne will play, and I think all of what's gone has gone. And they've had their blip, and as we know what Manchester City do from Christmas onwards, they're the juggernaut that says, "Come on then, catch me." Liverpool at the moment, they haven't had their blip. Chelsea, they ain't going away anywhere. They're there and thereabouts. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong on Monday morning, but I think Manchester City have had their blip.
Yeah, it was quite interesting looking at the Forest game in midweek. He tried Jack Grealish in a central role, seemed to do quite well in it as well. So obviously Pep's coming up with options to try and get City out of this slumping form, and it'll be interesting to see if he does utilise Grealish in that role in the coming weeks, as well as he looks to sort of solve the issues that they've had in midfield with Rodri injured as well. But we know Pep's a mastermind. He will come up with something, I'm sure, to get Man City back rolling and back up there amongst the title contenders. So yeah, as Paul says, I think probably we're too quick maybe to rule Manchester City out of winning the title, because they've been there, done it. They've got the T-shirt, they've got the 4 trophies. So yeah.
Well, we'll see Monday, won't we? I genuinely think we'll see Monday. We talk about Palace away being a tough trip for Man City, but they've not lost there for such a long time. They've got a great record at Selhurst Park. I'm trying to look through my notes now, so I did them earlier on today. They've not been beaten, or they've got a really good winning record at Selhurst Park. If they don't get something at Selhurst this weekend, that's when we have the conversation about Manchester City really hitting a blip.
And Pete, there is one more kind of shock transfer rumor for Manchester City. Juma Ba is linked with a January move to the Etihad. Would that be more of a sign and loan back out kind of deal? It doesn't seem like someone ready to step into the fold.
Yeah, no, he's nowhere near ready to come into that Manchester City team. He's only 18 years old, playing on loan at Real Valladolid. He's sort of broken into their team this season and has played in La Liga for them. But yeah, he's like a young central defender, 6'5", so he's a big, strong centre back who's showing a lot of potential for Valladolid. But yeah, I think he'd be one more for the future, a project maybe for Manchester City if they were to follow up. They're interested in the upcoming transfer window as well. But there is other clubs who are also looking at him as well. The likes of Everton, Newcastle and Palace have all been credited with an interest in Ba as well. But I think for Manchester City, they're probably just doing a bit of homework on Ba and maybe seeing if he has got the potential to make the move to the Etihad. But I don't expect anything imminent. And yeah, I don't think he'd be one for Pep right now. It's probably one for the future if he continues progressing like he is right now at Valladolid.